Hi, this is Molecular with the NB Academy, and today I'll be showing you the 2-5-1 chord progression. Here's how it can sound like. Okay, so before we keep going, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, so you can keep making more of these videos. So you might be wondering, what is the 2-5-1 chord progression? What does that mean? Why does it have all these numbers? So for the ones of you that don't understand anything about music theory, I'll do a brief explanation of the simple aspects of it, and then I'll talk about how you can use it and implement it with chords, bass, whatever. So the 2-5-1 chord progression, just a small introduction, is a very famous chord progression used in jazz and blues music, mostly in jazz. You can see it also in pop music, mostly, but some of the times that it's used in pop music, it's just used as the final phrase of the progression. So you would have a standard chord progression that's used in pop music, like 1, 2, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 6, 5, and then at the end of the phrase you could implement a 2-5-1 to have a perfect cadence back to the 1. So then again, like I said, if you're a beginner into music theory, or even if you don't really know anything about music theory, I'll do a little brief explanation. So I've got this sound here. It's just the same key sound that we were using, and I'll open the piano roll here, and I'll divide it into two sections. So in this first section, we just have the major C notes laid out. Major scale is built out of 7 tones, 7 notes, and the 8th one is the octave higher, so it just repeats. That's why you say an octave higher, it's the same note, but with an interval of 12 semitones higher. So this is the 7 notes that make the C major scale. Quite simple. That's the C, the D, the E, the F, the G, the A, the B, and then again it goes back to the 8th, which is the octave higher, C. So the 2-5-1 is basically assigning those numbers to the actual chords. So if you have 7 notes in the scale, you have the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6, and the 7. And if you keep going, you have the 8, the 9, the 10, 11th, blah, 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 so on and so forth. So basically, the 2 would be the D, because that's the second note in the scale. The 5 would be the G, which is the perfect 5th. So that's the 5th tone of the scale. And the 1 would be the C back again. So your 2-5-1 chord progression will sound like this. Okay, cool. So this is for the C major scale. Now, the reason why we use numbers instead of calling it the D, G, C chord progression is because if you use numbers, it's just way easier to translate it to any scale, any mode. It's just literally the second tone, the 5th tone, and the 1st tone. Or actually the 2nd chord, the 5th chord, and the 1st chord, because it's composed of chords. It's a chord progression. So right here I have the C minor scale, one of the very different minor scales that you can have. So here you can see the tone changes, this one and that one. So when we build the chords, they would be a little bit different. Because we have to build the chords around the notes that we have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply build a 2-5-1 chord progression for the C major version here. So let's start with the C. So let's start with the D, that's the 2. And how do you build a chord? Well, you need 3 tones. The root note, the 3rd, and the 5th. So then again, with the C, that would be the root note C, the 3rd, here we have the 3rd, and the 5th. There we go. And that's a chord. That's a major chord. Now, if this were to be the minor scale, if you remember correctly, this note was this. So on the minor chord, you would do it like this. Major. And minor. Okay, cool. So that's how you build a chord. Now, as for a D chord, let's start building it on D. So D, and then the 3rd, that would be F, and then the 5th, that would be A. Now let's copy this and create a G chord. So let's start on the G, and we need the 3rd. Oops, A sharp's not on the scale, so we need the B, and then the D. There we go. And now let's build the C chord. There we go, it's already done. Sounds nothing like what we have in the preview, and that's because it does carry that feeling of boom, boom, boom. It does carry that feeling in a way. But then there's another thing called chord inversions. And that's just a way to have the same chord but play it in a different way. Because as you can see, the interval here is so big. And then here again, it's even bigger. Like it's just going to sound boom, bang, boom. It's going to be too much. So what you can do is you can do a chord inversion. So you can grab, like, for example, the highest note and you can pitch it an octave down. So this is still a G major chord. It's still the same feeling. It's just phrased differently. Still the same notes, just different octaves. So we could do it like that. Let's see. Maybe. Or we could do it like this. Or like this. Or like this. So these are all different variations that you can have on the 251. Now let's make it a little bit more interesting and add 7th notes. You may ask, what is the 7th? So the chord has the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th. So let's add the 7th, which is 2 more tones in the scale. So you go higher, you go up 2 tones, and you grab that note. So for D, that would be, let's ignore this guy because that's 1. So that would be the 6th. We want the 7th, that would be this, the C. And then for G, so we need to go back 6th, 7th. That's the F. And for C, we have the 5th, 6th, 7th. That would be a B. Okay, so now we've got a little bit more jazzy. Okay, it's starting to sound different and jazzy. Cool stuff. It still sounds weird because it's not, there's big intervals happening, and we could make it simpler. So we could do it, for example, we could do like this. That sounds much better. But let's go back again and let's just keep adding more notes to make it even more jazzy and more bluesy and more drum and bassy, like more soulful. We can keep adding. So we have the 7th. Let's go through the same logic. We have 1st, 3rd, 5th, and then skip 1 again, 7th, and then skip 1 again, 9th. So what is the 9th? The 9th is the same as the 2nd tone here. Because if you go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you repeat 8th, and then the 9th, that would be the D in the case of a C. So we just basically get the 2nd tone from each one of them. So in the case of D, that would be an E. There we go, it's part of the scale. In the scale of G, that would be an A. It's part of the scale. And in the scale of C, that would be a D. Sounding big, those chords. Now we can start playing around and finding some nice, interesting inversions. So let's see, let's pitch this guy up, let's pitch this guy down, and let's pitch this C up. So we have a nice, interesting dissonance there. This is sounding interesting. And now we can do the bass line. So we could do D, G, C. Now maybe wondering, how do we make this even more jazzier? Well, let's just make it a little bit more natural sounding and play around with the positions of the notes. Make it more human, you know? There we go. It's already sounding a lot better. And we're missing 2 tones here, right? The D and the B. Okay. Just making it more human. There we go, and that's the 2-5-1 for the C major scale. Now, if you would want to build it for the C minor scale, let's delete this all. Let's do a D, an F, an A. Okay, a C, and let's duplicate this. Let's pitch this over to a G. Okay, so this doesn't exist, and we could make okay, and now let's get a C. That's the correct phrasing. And now a C. We stumble upon the same issue. However, let's just keep adding more notes. So I want to add, let's see, we can add a E. And we can add an A. Depending on the minor scale, some of them have an A, some of them don't. And now we have a D here. Now that's very interesting. Let's make them more close together. We can put this guy here, or we could even put that guy there. Ooh, very interesting. Very interesting sounding chord. And now let's make it human. Okay, lovely stuff. Now this is in C. Let's bring it to a scale that is more normal to drum and bass. Let's bring it down a little bit more. So if this is in C, let's make it G. There you go. And you can keep going with the 2-5-1. You know, you can do a 2-5-1 that goes into another 2-5-1. So, for example, so if this is a 2-5-1, 2-5-1, let's say this is that 1. So let's go back to this, just complicating it a little bit more. So a 2-5-1 in the scale of C would be D, G, C. But we could have the fifth of the D, which would be the A, before it resets. Okay? So we could go like D, G, C, A, D, G, C, A. And that's funny because A is the 5 of D, so it's a 5-1 going into the D, but C is the 2 to the D, so that would be a 2-5-1 in the scale of D, in the scale of C. And then it's interesting because before going back to the D, if we go C, A, D, that's another 2-5-1. So you could keep looping this and having more 2-5-1s. That's because music theory is just mind-blowing and everything is connected. So yeah, experiment with this for bass, melodies, chords, mostly for chords, where you can use this for anything. And this is a very simplified version. And like I said, you don't need to have your whole chord progression be just this. You can have another chord progression and then have this in the middle of it. But this is already a good enough starting point for you to start creating songs and just having a 2-5-1 chord progression. It's always going to sound good. So yeah, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. This is Molecular with DNB Academy, and we'll catch you again soon. Peace.